So today's guest on the Parenting Reboot is someone's writings that I have been deeply obsessed with. This is Danielle Mussafi. I hope I'm pronouncing your name
Yes.
right. Danielle Mussafi, she is a Brooklyn-based early childhood educator. She is a boy mom and a creator of this Substack page called Ordinary Animals, where she talks about all things related to motherhood, living a very ordinary and analog life, and how to go about raising kids in a resilient way in a very, very digital world. Through her newsletter, Danielle explores two major ideas. One is the concept of Matrescence, the profound transformation a woman undergoes when she becomes a mother. And the other one is the analog life, which is kind of a deep and an honest experiment of how to go analog and ways in which you can find mundane things or ordinary things fun in your day-to-day without being deeply connected to technology. Welcome, Danielle, to the show. This is going to be super exciting to, explore and unpack so many of these topics.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Tell us what your mission in life is in one sentence. And I probably urge you to not use the word ordinary animals because we're going to unpack that in another
Okay.
question. So if your life were a sentence, what would it be right now?
I think for me, I can kind of separate this in two ways. One, as a teacher, I'm an early childhood educator. So my purpose in my classrooms with my students is to make them feel loved and safe and cared for, so that they can really develop the social emotional skills that help them really be in community with themselves and each other. Because a lot of times it's their first time in a classroom, and I just want them to, have a really positive first time in a classroom, and I take that very seriously. I take fun and love very seriously in my classroom. And then outside of my classroom, I'd say my purpose is really helping parents to understand young children and themselves, and with a lot more gentleness and realism and humanity than maybe they will come at parenting with. And I know you said not to use the words ordinary animals, but to remember that we're ordinary animals who just need play and movement and nature and love and connection.
Why ordinary? What does it mean to be an ordinary animal?
I love that you asked this because no one's asked me to explain the name. And I was so happy when I came up with this name when it popped up, because I felt like it really did summarize a lot of what I write about and think about. For me, I think the animal part really came right after having my first son and realizing just how mammal and we are, nursing him, sleeping next to him, because I had never thought of myself that way before. And until I was really in it with him, it really just opened up my mind to it all of wow, we are just animals and we live in a world that wants us to be machines. It wants us to be optimized. It wants us to be productive. It wants us to be consistent and efficient and really just productive workers in this life. And so for me, it was kind of taking that back and being but wait, there's a lot more to life than that. The ordinary part also, for me, I think human beings are amazing, right? We've done so much. We've completely taken ourselves out of the food chain. We dominate this planet. We've created great works of art and music and literature and have built skyscrapers and have airplanes and gone to outer space and all this stuff. But we're really just animals on a spinning rock in the middle of space, and we don't really know that much, We're just these ordinary beings. And so for me, it's a way of humbling myself and humbling us of we are just ordinary animals. The weight of the world does not always have to be on our shoulders as individuals, and just to kind of, be grounded in that and take, gotta take pride in it. Be I am just an ordinary animal, and that's okay. That's enough,
Wow. Wow. That, oh my God, you use the word grounded, and that is so, so important and carries so much humility and weight, especially when you're living in such a hyper connected world. And I want to pull so many strands out on that piece, but a bit later. But the one thing that resonated with me, which you mentioned, and I feel like I used to be the only one harping about it to my husband when I was going through postpartum, is I feel unproductive being a mother. Why am I so stationary? Why do I have to be trapped in this nursing chair? I used to feel like, I think there's a word for it called nap trap, because when
Hmm.
she was really little, my baby, she used to always sleep only in my arms. So I used to feel trapped in
Yeah.
that moment, feeling like I'm not being productive. My hours are not being utilized well. And, I had to step back and think to myself, wait a second, like nobody's clocking in and out of motherhood. Like
Right.
nobody's watching my every movement. And that's what the capitalistic society has trained you to believe, or your
Hmm.
brains to believe, that you must feel productive or be productive every moment. And motherhood or becoming a parent is not so, right? So I want to gently move towards the concept of matrescence, which you
Hmm.
touched on so well through your Substack page too. Tell us a bit about how you uncovered that and what the Matrescence questionnaire is all about.
Sure. Yes. So the matrescence, it's a word that was coined, I think, in the 1970s. It's
Mm,
the developmental passageway into motherhood. Just like adolescence is from childhood to adulthood, it touches on every part of our lives, our physical, mental, emotional, social, our relationships, our identity, our values. It really transforms every part of us. And yet it's a word that most women don't know. It's still not even in the dictionary. It's in which is crazy. Every time I type it, it has a little red line under it because the word is not known enough yet. And I think that absence of language makes women who feel maybe they're struggling or they're not, jumping into motherhood, in the way that they had imagined. Maybe the quote unquote like maternal instinct hasn't kicked in yet, or they're struggling in their relationships or with their body or with their, their partner. They make it without the word matrescence, without the understanding of the concept,
mm.
they think it's their fault, that they are struggling, it's something on them, when I think to have the language, it makes it say, "No, this is
This is
normal.
not a, yeah.
It's going to take time." And I think for me, after I had my first son, this was in 2018, I'm a early childhood educator. I'm a teacher. I went to school for it. I've worked with young children for years and years and years. So I felt that I should jump into motherhood easily. I really felt like, and my skills have helped me. I knew how to change a diaper. I knew how to do certain things that some parents don't, but I still was shook by the identity shift, and I really did not feel equipped to handle it, and I felt almost embarrassed to tell people I was struggling because shouldn't I know? Shouldn't I have this down? Like, does this make me a bad teacher now that I can't be a mom? Like, it was all these questions,
Yeah.
all these thoughts of identity and how am I raising my child and stuff, and that when I found the word matrescence, it just came across an internet, article somewhere.
Mm,
Immediately, my shoulders dropped. It was like, of
yeah.
course this is a thing. Like, why would I think I would jump, like, why would I think I would jump into this so easily? It just took the pressure off it. And then so I just want to share that word. So the Matrescence questionnaire is my way of asking other mothers who have been moms. I usually try to ask moms who have been mothers for at least 5 years because I feel like there's, you need a little bit of time to be able to reflect and share the changes and the transformations. And I just want to literally spread the word. I want the word to go around so every mom won't blame themselves if they're having a harder time or they're not getting it as quickly as they wanted to.
I feel like there's literally no baseline out there in the space of literature around like being a new mom or postpartum. I vividly remember going through those birthing classes and online classes about preparing expecting mothers to be a new mother, and all they touch upon very, very lightly are these things called baby blues or
Yeah.
feeling disoriented, but never, ever, ever has it once been openly or, properly been shared out there that, it's okay to not feel yourself. It's okay to not know what being a mother is like, because it's a lifelong lesson. You're learning along the
Yeah.
way as much as your baby's learning to adapt to this new world. So gosh, I never thought
Yeah.
that this didn't exist in the dictionary.
It doesn't exist. There's like a campaign going right now trying to get the word into the dictionary. So hopefully that will change. Hopefully in the next year, next edition or two, hopefully it's in there. So at least it's an official word. um,
It's an official word.
yeah, it's officially there. Yeah. Absolutely. I think a lot of times moms also feel this pressure to remain the same,
Mm.
quote unquote, bounce back. You don't want to be the mom who only talks about their kids, that kind of, there's all this pressure to almost stay exactly how you were. And I think through the Matrescence questionnaire and through my own experience and the other writing that I do, becoming a mom has been the most expansive, exciting, fun part of my life. Like, I feel more like myself. I feel more grounded in my priorities. My values are sharper. I'm able to work more. Like, talk about productivity. Like, you ask a mom to do something and they can do it in a way that, like, the priorities, boom, boom, boom. Like, all of these skills, connecting to other mothers, like finding other like relationships. My relationship with my husband is deeper. We have a deeper respect for each other. Like, is it hard? Of course, but it's not a bad thing to shift and change. Like, Matrescence has been wonderful.
Mm.
It's hard. The first couple years are hard and disorienting, but it's a journey. And so I just want moms to kind of give themselves grace for that journey.
100%. That's
Yeah.
so well put. And like just to pivot a bit before we talk a bit about children and technology and the role in, parenting kids in today's world, one last piece I want to ask about matrescence and motherhood journeys, right? What do you think has been like the social media and technology's influence on the identity shift that happens in mothers? What I mean by that is, do you think women, especially yourself as well, when you were going through postpartum, you felt that identity shift or that shift in expectations just because the social media and the digital world shifted the way you look at motherhood? Was there pressure coming on from those aspects as well?
Absolutely. I mean, I think Instagram is like a perfect example where it's very like visual based and very like perfection.
Yeah.
When my oldest son was born, 2018, there was a lot of, like boho style, like hippie moms with their like organic outfits and, beautiful, like, backgrounds, and the house is clean and they're in their little Moses basket. And there was all these images that I definitely bought into. And I thought, okay, if my life looks like this,
You'd be the
if I
perfect mom.
then I would then I got it, didn't I? Like, didn't I, so if I get the, the wicker baskets, and if I get the right, carrier that all of them are saying is the right thing to get, then I'll get motherhood. And it does take time to say, wait, no, this is an internal thing that is not going to be just taken in one picture, or the whole picture is not going to be one picture, right? It could show a moment, and and I had those moments too. If I took a picture of certain moments, yeah, of course it would look right, and it would feel right too. There are joy in the hard times too. It's not one thing or the other. At the same time, but I think for me, and this is where I took a big step back from social media for many years. I think around 2021, I deleted everything, and I didn't go back until 2024 when I started my Substack. And I think Substack for me, that's why I've been enjoying it so much, is that it can be a little bit more nuanced, a little
Mm.
bit more complicated. And it's, so I like that sharing more. That feels more comfortable for me, that I can, you know, ramble as much as I want there. It's not one picture.
We're all about rambling here.
Yeah.
That's awesome. No, it does make sense because like a lot of the moms I speak to, when myself included, you feel trapped because you are constantly comparing yourself against these boxes on social media that look pretty, and you think that's a standard to achieve when in all honesty it's a lot of inward work that needs to
Yes.
happen, especially in those early years, right?
Right.
Okay, so you're an educator, you're a mom of two. What's kind of the single biggest shift that you've noticed in the way young children interact with the world today? I believe you already have a 6-year-old.
I have
So
an
you're
8-year-old.
8-year-old. Yes,
8-year-old,
sorry.
yes. No, it's fine.
Um,
8.
yeah,
I have an
so
8-year-old and a 2-year-old. Yeah.
so you're starting to see the way in which probably both your sons and kids around you are, you know, seeing technology in day to day or getting curious about social media or YouTube and things like that. So what are some of the shifts you're noticing?
I think the biggest thing that I'm noticing, and this is more like as an educator and just as a elder millennial myself, like I grew up in the in New York, and my childhood was spent outside playing with friends, and now technology, if kids are on screens, there's just not kids outside. So I can't send my son, my 8-year-old, outside to play in the way that my parents sent me because there's not other kids out there. And I think the expectations of watching kids and being much more vigilant with kids has exploded since like the 90s and thousands. There was a lot of fear, kidnapping or trouble, things like that. And we've gotten a lot more attentive on our children for better and for worse, and the hard part is now they're not outside for long stretches of time just playing, and I think that's the thing that's missing the most because that is like the most fertile ground of childhood, and that's where kids learn. They learn social skills, they learn language, they learn how to negotiate, they learn how to deal with hard feelings if they feel left out, or how does it feel that I made someone feel left out. They have to experience these things through their play. I always say, like, my favorite part is watching kids come up with the rules of the game. Sometimes coming up with the rules of the game takes hours, and then they only play for like a little bit, but because the rules, the negotiating is the play. So I think that's what kids are missing now and when they're just at home on a device. You know,
Yeah.
so yeah, with my kids, I'm very strict about certain screens, no cell phones, no tablets, that kind of stuff. I want them to always feel comfortable though. If there is something that happens on a screen, I want them to be able to come and tell me about it. So I don't want it
Mm,
to be completely off limits where they would be more worried about getting in trouble that they were on a screen than telling me that something happened on the.
mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there's a balance there also. So it's like I'm not totally 100% strict. My kids watch TV and movies, it's around in their lives, but I do try to keep it in its place, and not let it take over completely.
Okay. That makes sense. Like no personal devices when they're super, super young, doing probably joint screen time or TV time and movies and things like that. But I do want to unpack, the play aspect of it before I talk a bit more
Sure.
about devices and the classroom aspect of it, right? Like we are definitely noticing a distinct shift away from a play-based childhood, right? And you've spoken much about it on your Substack too. We've heard Jonathan Haidt through his Anxious Generation cite a lot of, mental health issues, growing mental health issues in teenagers and kids up on a rise since the early 2000s, since personal devices and social media became a part of kids' lives, right? So, what are we getting wrong right now in terms of devices, technology, and play? Is it the fact that there are way too many devices, way too early in access to social media, or is it a fact that we've stopped perhaps caring about these developmental milestones that are so crucial early on?
I think it's a combination of it all. I think we definitely, have taken the places, like safe places for children to just gather and play, like don't exist in the way that they did, like where groups of children can be unattended to, like where they can just play on their own, which is how I played as a child. It wasn't generations and generations and generations ago. This was just my childhood that I would get to go and ride my bike around the neighborhood, and that's harder and harder to come by now. So I
Mm,
think that's a huge thing, and just having spaces where children are allowed. I think we're turning more and more into like a society where in general there's no third spaces as much anymore. People go home or they're at work and there's not these places of community where children and multi-generation, you want people of all ages to be able to engage together, and we just are losing that. So I think
yes.
that's a huge thing. And then to supplement it, and because of a lot of the societal, especially in America here, we don't have a great social net for families. It's
Yeah.
really on the parents a lot. We don't live in the villages like we may have. We don't live with extended family like we may used to have. So it's all on the parents. Of course, you're going to need the phone becomes, or the television becomes, a co-parent, because, and I see it in my own life. This is someone who thinks about this stuff all the time. And you got to believe I put the television on when I need a break, because I'm a human. I'm one person, and if we're working hard and there's no other kids for my kids to play with outside, like what am I supposed to do, So I get it. Like I never come from a place of digital
Of course.
purity or judgment, and I think that's like, I try to write from that place of like, I'm in it with everyone, these are the things that I'm thinking about. Like, I'm aware of them. I see how this
Yeah.
is affecting our kids, and I
Yes.
get it. And I get why we might need a break sometime. So, but I also do think, that's why I like to make the distinction between handheld touch screens, like personal
Mm.
devices, and television and movies that are done on like a family room, with screen. Because I think it helps parents feel less guilt. When we group it all into just screens, then you feel bad about putting on Sesame Street for a half hour, when I don't think you should feel bad about putting on Sesame Street for a half hour, you know? So, but I think parents take this message of screens are bad, when it's like, no, if you can separate it out and just say, I am going to wait as long as I possibly can to introduce these devices to my children. If I think about it as like a hot stove or a parking lot, you wouldn't let your kid just run through a parking lot. You're very
Yeah.
strict in certain moments. So that's how I think of those devices. They are tools. I try not to be on it so much in front of them. Sometimes that's hard. Sometimes it has to happen, but I try. They know they don't touch it. It's like as if it's a hot stove. No, hard
No. Yeah.
no, that's mommy's no, and take it away immediately. And then be loose other ways too. And so now my son is 8. So I think either through play as he has aged. So I know at one point I had an old iPad keyboard that died, So I gave that to him as a toy. So he can sit there and pretend in his play
He's
to,
working.
yeah, so and so he would draw pictures and he would put them as the screen, and that would be his because again, like, I'm not trying to say like all technology is horrible, you can't touch it, and that kind of stuff. And now as he's older, he's in 2nd grade, he has iPad time in his classroom on Friday afternoons. They get to use a Chromebook. He's over the moon excited about it every time he gets to do it. And I don't try to make him feel bad. I go, that's great, honey. I'm excited for you. I don't want it to be a thing where he doesn't feel comfortable coming to me. Like, let's say he stumbles upon something that he has a question about or is curious about. Like, I don't want him to feel worried that he's going to be in trouble that he was on a computer. And now as he's age 8, every now and then on the weekends, he's allowed to go on my iPad. He doesn't have his own, and he's allowed to play games that we've chosen together for half hour or 45 minutes. So I always tell him, you're going to get to do everything when the time is right, when you're the right age. So
Absolutely.
it's not about a hard no forever. It's
Yeah.
just keeping it where it's supposed to be and protecting their earliest years.
I think the message I'm hearing, which also a lot of parents generally would love to hear, is the gradual and the paced introduction of technology as
Yes.
best as possible for children, because technology is here to stay. It's
It's the
the
life we
intention.
live. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
the
like,
intention and it's
yeah,
conversation. Like, my son understands why we hold out. We talked about it over and over and over again as the years go on, because now, yes, he does have friends that have smartwatches. He asked for like an Apple Watch for the holidays, and I had to be like, no, you're not getting an Apple Watch, even though one of his friends does. So you have to have these conversations at a certain point and say, why I'm making these choices, why we're talking about it. But I always go back to, you will get to do and watch anything you ever want, like at some point when you're old enough, for him, at least it works. For him, that seems to be like, okay, it's not no forever. When you're the right age, when it's appropriate, you'll get it to do it.
which is where I think the next part where I'm headed, it's such a complex thing to dissect, but I'm going to try with you because
Okay.
you recently put out a beautiful essay about why to not hand out the smartphones to your babies and toddlers yet. You touched upon it a little bit. You're also an educator, so you're seeing at a systemic level, like in schools and in other institutions, they're introducing things like iPads and Chromebooks for kids as early as grade 1 or grade 2.
Mhm.
In
Mhm.
certain other countries all over the world, you're allowed to take these devices back home. And middle schoolers may or may not have unfettered access to these devices, right? So there are things parents can do at home, but there are things at a larger ecosystem level, right? At
Mhm.
the community level that's happening at different times and spaces. Just
Yeah.
like you mentioned, right? Your kid's friends already have a smartphone or a smartwatch, which makes him feel like he's being left out. So from your perspective, both as an educator and as a mom, where should we start having these conversations? And how do we bring about that sense of awareness, not just in parents, but also at a larger community level when it comes to what harms technology in general can do, especially owning devices for kids?
Right. I mean, I think a lot of conversations are being had. I think that this is a conversation that is just going to keep growing over the next like handful of years, especially as AI really gets into everything. It's changing the way school works. I've been thinking a lot about what is the purpose of education and
Both.
early childhood education in the world of AI. And for me, I always go to, well, that's where you teach the human skills. And it almost excites me in a way where I'm like, okay, like now we can really focus on certain things. But I think there's conversations that are already happening. Parents can definitely seek out through their PTA or their school system if the conversation's already happening. I think there's going to be a starting to be a pushback against EdTech, and in classrooms and stuff. I think that conversation is really starting. I think teachers and parents are seeing it's not working. It's not worth it. We want to go back to like pen and paper. We want to go back more analog in classrooms. So I think parents can start plugging in that way and communicating with their teachers. I think teachers are a really great place to start. Maybe I'm biased, but teachers
Oh,
go
no,
into this
100%.
go into this profession because they want to teach children and they love children and they want to help. So I think a lot of times they can get like burnt out and broken down by the system, but their heart is really there. And I think if a parent goes with great intentions of just being like, how can we partner together and make these choices or change certain things, I think teachers can be very responsive, or I hope that they would at least. And so that's a great place. Other parents too, I think a huge thing, and this is something that I'm working towards with my son's friends. So yes, there's going to be friends that have phones for whatever situation or circumstance they do, and or smart devices in some way. But I'm trying to find, even if they're not like the closest of friends, you just want a handful of other people that you can
Yeah,
point to and say, you are not the only one. Because I think that's it, where you can say, well, Billy and Sam and, Sarah all don't have it either, and none of you are getting it until XYZ. Until you make the plan. It's like there's a wait till 8th campaign, which parents are waiting till 8th grade. And for me, I would even push that farther. I would say wait till age 16, whatever. I don't know. Like I don't exactly even have the number, but just push really as far as we can. Um, because again, the technology is gonna be here. It's not
it's,
necessarily
yeah,
going anywhere, but can we protect children from it? I think we've just kind of opened the gates and now it's time, and it's hard to close it back again, but parents know and we're working on it, and so do teachers. So, I think we're building the momentum, and you have to kind of find the other people in your community that feel the same way.
I think that's kind of a beautiful way for somebody to go be brave about seeking similar connections out and find what works best for you as a family first, but also what works best for you as a community. Such movements gain more momentum. I also love that you emphasize on edtech because that's a part I love like unpacking a lot. And Emily Churkin, a really famous screen time consultant who's also been rallying with public school education system in the US to get them to push out devices and try to keep learning very analog, always uses the term go back to tech education, not ed tech. And there's like a
Mhm.
stark difference between the two. Like tech education would be something like learning keyboarding skills
Right.
or learning how to code and how to build a website or I don't know, go back to the computer lab for an hour and that's just it and not relying on technology products
To
throughout your
teach.
curriculum to teach, yeah, to do your
Mhm.
homework, right?
Right. I
So
agree.
no,
Yeah.
that's
I think these conversations are happening for sure. And I think a lot of schools are seeing it and a lot of parents want it because we see what's happening.
yeah,
My husband's a high school teacher, so he sees children at the end of their, public school education, and they're seeing the effects, and it's not working what we're
it's
doing
not.
now. So hopefully, I always say hopefully for our kids' generation, we can shift things.
Fully. All right, let's talk about the analog life and where some of the contradictions lie. Is it tough to try to go analog in today's day and age? Tell us a bit more about like your experiments with the analog life and how that part of your Substack came into being.
Sure. I think for me, it was a gradual part. Like when I started Ordinary Animals, I didn't know that I was going to be writing about technology so much. I thought it was going to be more motherhood focus, and I obviously connect the two and everything. But as I've been writing, this is what I've been really thinking about in my own life and in my kids' lives. And so it was sort of like a natural growth.
Okay.
I think for me, I don't go analog 100%. Like I have a smartphone, I have technology. Like I said, I'd never speak from the mountaintop of digital purity at all. I'm a child of the 80s and 90s with a father who was obsessed with technology. I grew up with it myself. It's intertwined in my life. There's been such great things from it. I met my husband on the internet. You know what I mean? We met on a dating site
Yeah.
years ago before there were apps, thank God. But we met, on the internet. I met some of my best friends that are still my friends. There's been real value, from the internet and from technology that I can't deny. I'm not going to say that I wasn't informed by it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, these devices and the internet are supercharged, powerful devices that completely can take over your life and completely help you completely become disembodied, forget to eat. You can be stuck in a internet hole for hours and hours and not know where the time went. And that's what I push back against, where I want to keep technology in my life as a tool
Mm.
and use it in ways where it makes connections. Like we found now each other through the internet. We're talking
Yeah.
and having this great conversation because of Substack, because of the newsletter. That's value. I'm so excited about that. That's
Absolutely.
a goal of mine, is to make these connections. And at the same time, I want to be able to put the phone down and live a real, actual life with my family, with my friends, like with my hands, with my senses, with all the things of being a ordinary animal.
Yeah. That's true. It's be an active user, but not a passive end user. That's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm
It's really about like just intention,
intent.
be intentional. And again, I'm the first one that will fall into black hole. It happens to me too. These devices are so intense and so strong. Like, of course, like if you
Yeah.
you go on, you can get distracted immediately and do. What was I on here again for? And an hour later, you're like, wait, what? Like, I don't even know what I was doing.
Yep.
So I experience it too. So at the same time, it's like, okay, I make these times, my phone goes in a drawer. I can make different choices now. Like I have situations. So now when I'm like nursing my son, I make sure I have my Kindle there. I'm reading. I don't bring my phone there. There's different choices that we can make that can greatly improve our lives and make us happier, health people and parents and coworkers and all the things.
That's true. But I keep wondering, like in today's day and age, a lot of parents, a lot of moms especially hustle. They probably have two part-time jobs. One of them is on the internet. They are content creators while trying to do a night shift somewhere else. So for somebody for whom everything revolves around the phone and they make money through it, is going analog even possible? Or rather, is an analog life in a digital world coming from a space of privilege?
I'm really glad you asked that question. I think it's something that's really an interesting, angle and framework to look through. You're not the first person who's like brought that up to me. And I think for me, I totally understand the instinct behind it, because I think it's real. It's very real. There's people who live their days on a computer screen. They have to. It's their job, it's their work. I feel like lucky in a lot of ways that my work is very embodied. I'm with my hands, I'm on the floor, I'm with children, and that kind of thing. But at the same time, there's, yeah, the privilege of, preschool teachers don't make a lot of money. I'm
Yeah.
not like privileged in other ways. There's choices and trade offs for
Yeah.
every type of life that you live. So I also just want to just pull back that frame a little bit, because I think as a culture, I think there's a lot of value in discussing privilege and who's privileged and who has it and not, and systemic structures that put certain people ahead of others. That's real. Like, that is, I think we can all agree that that's real. And at the same time, I think that's only one lens to look through
Mhm.
this with.
Just the-
Yeah, this thing with, because I think for me, I want to be that we are all human. We're all human beings, and we all have like the birthright of being alive is to enjoy being here. Oh, and if you can't take 3 minutes to walk out in the sunshine, or you can't, take a walk around the block on a break, or write a gratitude list, or read a book instead of, oh, there, because the things that I suggest are mostly free. They're really just about how do you train your attention to things that bring you joy and presence and beauty and connection, as
Mhm.
opposed to just letting it be sucked into the black void of your phone. So for me, I think if it really is a privileged thing to do, then we have way bigger problems. Then we've really lost the plot, because I just want every single person, no matter their situation. I mean, like we were talking earlier, I mean, you're like watching a war unfold, right? Like, that is terrifying and real. And, my family is involved too. And it's really scary. And even in those moments, I mean, what's the point of fighting and being alive if not to be able to be present with those you love, or take these moments of like creation and creativity and connection? That's the point of everything.
That's
So that's where I'm like, okay, yes, I understand the question of privilege, and some people will have more time and some people will have more space to do things. But really, it's, can you take a break from constant input? Can you sit quietly for 2 minutes? Can you close your eyes and focus on your breathing? Can you, do like 10 jumping jacks just to feel your body and your blood move? Like, anyone can do that and anyone should. It's really not about privilege, it's just about being human.
yeah. No, that's really well put. And one of the things that I took away from that is the duality, right? Both things can exist. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be at the cost of the other. Like your analog life can exist with your digital life.
Yes.
You're not foregoing one or the other. And like you said, it's free. It's your everyday things, but the intentionality, that conscious decision that you make to put your devices away, be away from social media, do a detox, whatever works in your bandwidth of or your time of things. I think it's such an important lesson to take away, because for anybody who hears this or is thinking about, oh, my life revolves around social media, I cannot live and breathe without social media. Everything has to be Instagrammable, filterable, and things like that. It's that human element. Just step back and really watch the sunrise for the sake of watching the sunrise, rather than it being
Yes.
like a moment for social media, right?
Exactly, exactly. I think for me, when I talk about going analog, or, putting more of that, intention in your life, I'm not talking about expensive hobbies or a completely, curated lifestyle in any way. It's really just about like reclaiming small moments of your attention and your intention inside whatever life you're actually living. Like, you can be on a bus, a city bus, going from one
Yeah.
job to the other. And yes, it's easy to pick out your phone and scroll. Like, of course, like I understand why you
Yeah.
might want to quote unquote check out that way. But if you take the first 3 minutes of it and take out a journal instead and write 3 things you're grateful for and do a little doodle of a flower or 2, like, wouldn't that feel better? Don't you feel
Yeah.
more connected? Don't you check in with yourself a little bit more,
That's
you
true.
know? And then you could put it on your phone, like whatever, you need to do. Like, I'm not, again, ever gonna say I'm totally pure. Like, I'm not?
Yeah. No, 100%. It's like you said, small acts of intent. It's going to add up and make probably a very big difference if you ever want to try pursuing an analog life alongside your digital life, right? I feel like we've unpacked so many
I
different
know.
uh, sides to this topic, right? Is there anything I'm missing out that you feel like we need to push or like talk a bit more, like maybe the tech angle in education, or maybe even like things that parents can do in their day to day, like actionable things they can do in the day to day to feel a little bit more in control of the way they parent in this digital world or the way they use devices themselves?
Good question. I mean, I have been thinking a little bit. I've been working on a little piece of writing that's like one of my top tips for transitioning away from screens or something like that. And for me and in my family, it's really leaning on audio. I think audio
Mm,
is this like middle ground
yeah.
place that is realistic for a lot of families that I think um, is kind of unexplored. I think people don't like think about it in the same way where it's like you can put on for me like I have a big record vinyl collection, so I'll put on a record or put on, a playlist that I have like curated for my kids with their favorite songs and do their interests and stuff. And I think that's a good middle ground between devices and screens because it also can just be background sounds and music that keeps their kind of brain going while they engage in the real world. So they can be, playing with their toys, playing with blocks or drawing or something and listening to a podcast story or something. And you can then,
Mm.
slowly kind of take
Fade
the
it out.
music away, fade it out, but it's a nice transition piece because I think one of the things that has helped me think about screens and kids is just to think about how what it's doing to their bodies and to their minds. So even like a device is the the most intense of this, but television too. Even though I let my kids watch TV, it is a dopamine rush. There's colors, there's sounds, and it's passive. They can kind of let it wash over them. There's no effort on their part to enjoy it. So they can just sort of put it on, let it wash over them. So then if you say, okay, TV's done, go build your blocks. Now they're building their blocks. It's falling over. They're getting frustrated. Like, of course they're going to be hysterical and cry and not want to do
Yeah.
it and say, I'm bored. I don't like it because they're just used to it being so passive. So for me, I find the audio is a great way of like
Transitioning. Yeah.
bridging the two.
Wow. Wow.
And yeah, so that would be like a bit one of my tips to
That is
try in your family. That's a
that is
realistic tip. It's
it is.
realistic.
I mean, I haven't really thought about it that way because like I let my daughter to once in a while watch a Bluey episode here and there, trying so hard to be low tech with her, and TV time is always together time. But
Hmm.
every single time, even if we watch like a 7 minute episode, I see that drop in
Yeah,
energy. I see that she's gonna probably have a meltdown because it's no more TV. But I think that's a fantastic way to transition kids in general, but also to set the mood for various times of the day, morning time music, afternoon time,
exactly.
or like nighttime, bath time music, and things like that,
Hmm.
right? So get them in the groove or wind them down for bedtime. I think that's realistic. That's also something that's actionable in a low cost way. I mean, you don't really need a lot of setup for audio to go on, I believe,
No.
at homes.
And you can, connect it to, my youngest son is obsessed with dinosaurs. So sometimes he'll be watching like a dinosaur cartoon and it's time, I'll watch for like his half hour and then it's time. So
Yes.
then I'll put on dinosaur songs. So he can keep
Being in the
it
groove.
going. He keeps going in the grove, but that okay, we're saying bye bye to the show, but let me put on your music. You want to listen to Baby T Rex and yeah, and then we
Yeah.
move on. When the TV gets to go off, the music is on, and then at a certain point, you can take the music off, switch to something else. It doesn't have to be dinosaur songs forever then, but just it's a nice bridge that I
That's
find is
wow.
helpful.
Wow, that's beautiful, Danielle. Before we close up, I must ask you because you've seen kids in school and classrooms, but of course you have two of your own. What makes you hopeful about this generation and the future that you see for them?
I think what makes me hopeful is that they really care and that they're worried, So I think that there's a lot of people out there who are trying their best to, gift their children like a more old school childhood, if they can. So I think there's definitely, pathways there. There's other people in community that parents can find. I think, I feel like we're seeing sort of the effects of an unfiltered sort of, let the kids have it approach, in terms of phones and social media and technology. And I don't think the kids were happy. I don't think the parents were happy. I think we really learned from those mistakes. So I do feel like there is a shift, I think. And my thing now also is really wanting parents to do that shift without so much guilt and
Yeah.
pressure and and to really give them grace in it. We live in a crazy world. It's like it's near impossible to be off of these devices, and that's why I try to write and think it from a place of being in the middle with everyone. Like, I'm in it too. We're all just trying our best. Don't beat yourself up so much. You're not a bad parent if your
Yeah.
kid, give your kid the phone to brush their teeth. If, a couple people on that post that I wrote, a few of them said, I use only one time a day. I put a 2-minute video on my phone so I can brush my kids' teeth, or I can brush their hair without crying. And I want to say, listen, if you want to do different options, there's different options. You can do audio only, you can do things, but like, also, you're okay. Like, you're okay, like, we're all doing our best. So I think a little bit more forgiveness, a little bit more like patience and grace with yourself, while also, at the core of it, like, looking towards, the light of, we're doing our best. We're
Yeah.
trying.
Wow. That's so beautiful because you very gently weaved it back to the whole matrescence concept too, about it takes time. Give yourself
Yeah.
grace. And it's a whole new shift we're all going through together. So I love it. Thank you so much, Danielle. I
Oh my
feel
God.
like I have learned so much from you today.
Thank you.
Truly, truly hope the community, parents, whoever are listening to it, also find value from this, but also take something back home. Please do follow Ordinary Animals. I'm going to leave the link below in the description, and give some love to Danielle.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun.